Bernie, there was a fellow that worked for the business college there, and he drifted into the courthouse on that Saturday morning, and by that time we had about 500 names on the missing list, and that list went to about 3,500, and the volunteers were using yellow pads of paper and writing people's names and phone numbers down that had been reported as missing. Well, this volunteer said, wait a minute, he said, we've got a business college across the street. I'll call in 20 of our key punch operators. Now, this is not the computer age in 1972, and we had these old IBM and Burroughs key punch machines. And before long, they took all those lists of paper over to the National College of Business, and by 5 o'clock that afternoon, we had 1,500 names on the alphabetized missing list. And that grew to over 3,000 people who thought members of their family had been killed. And then 3 or 4 days later, we had every radio station in town, and we had 20 phone lines. And the most popular radio man in town, Vern Shepard, read those names real slow. It was very boring, but he read those names, and he said, now, if you know that this person is alive, you call this number. We have to get a workable list here. And it went on for something like 14 hours. And by the end of the day, we had about 800 names on the missing list. And I remember a morning in August, about the 20th, I was down at City Hall and working on paperwork, and I finally had a suit on, but it had just been a shocking summer. And there was a bomber pilot from World War II with good military experience, and they put him in charge of the missing list. And I was down there working on paperwork and dictating letters, and I had 2 secretaries there helping me about 5 in the morning. And this man knocked on the window, and I looked who it was. It was my friend, the guy in charge of the missing list. And he came in the door, and he had tears in his eyes, and he looked me in the eye, and he said, Mayor, I got the missing list down to 23 names. And we both had a good cry and a couple cups of coffee, and by 8 o'clock that morning, we went back to work, and he was trying to find those other 23. And that was a highlight that I remember, going from 3,500 missing people down to just 23. And finally, there were about 3 bodies that were never found, but the courts declared those people had passed away.
Mm-hmm. What an effort. We don't have enough time to talk about all of it. We should have you on one more time before the commemoration, because we'd like to hear more about that. What do you think,
Well,
Matt?
we could sure do that, because we want people in South Dakota to really pause for a moment in June. This is so important. It's not about me. It's not about one of the flood victims. It's about the whole concept of the terror and the tragedy of losing those lives, and then what happened in the recovery. I mean, I didn't see a lot of self-pity in Rapid City. And the city council we didn't have a monopoly on wisdom, but we called public meetings, and it finally dawned on people that living beside this creek was a pretty stupid thing to do. And then we said, well, how can we help people? And somebody said, well, you could buy my damaged house from me. And before long, the idea evolved, and then the federal government got involved. And I mean, you guys know me that I'm a Yahoo Democrat, but I will tell you, President Nixon and his FEMA people, when they came to help Rapid City, they were heroes in Rapid City. There wasn't these hate mongers out there that hate government the way we have it today with these nonsensical teabaggers and all these people. They just hate everything about government. Well, those people would not have been very popular in Rapid City. Our cities and our county government did a good job, and the mayor of Sturgis did a good job, and the mayor of Hill City did a good job, and our congressman did a good job, and the state people. Governor Knipe was out there up to mud by 10 o'clock the next morning, and he was with us and giving us encouragement. And President Nixon had appointed the very best people he could find to manage FEMA, and they came out and really helped us. When I heard about the tragic conduct of those political goofballs that went down there to manage the FEMA operation in New Orleans, I almost cried, because, boy, that wasn't the condition of the Nixon appointees, I'll tell you. President Nixon sent Mrs. Nixon out, and she spent an entire afternoon with us 8 days after the flood. She brought tears to our eyes, and I said at the program, I said, Mrs. Nixon, you bring the majesty of America to Rapid City, and we humbly salute you, and we thank you for this inspiration. She was a wonderful lady, and she waded right in and met with the survivors, and She met with the injured people. She was a tremendous lady. I always had a special place in my heart for her. And so consequently, we were proud of government, and I'd be happy to come on again and talk about this. It just chills my spine when I have people tell us how bad government is. Government is not bad. It's needed. It's necessary. And those people spreading this hate-mongering this year, all this nonsense, they should have their mouth washed out with lava soap.
That's a good comment, and I hope you will. And Bernie, I'm going to let you.
Well, let's do it in about 2 weeks, guys. Let's get part 2 and hear more about the commemoration, because I bet a lot of our listeners probably would like to take part in that. We're one big community in South Dakota, and I'm sure we've got listeners who maybe lived out there at the time or had relatives out there and want to know about the commemoration. So how about in 2 weeks?
Well, I'd love to do it. If you give me a reminder, I will do everything I can, and we'll do our best, and we'll put on I'll try to get some more members of the committee, and I've got an assistant fire chief that retired, Dean Reichert, and he can tell the story of those firemen better than anybody can, and I'll see if I can get Dean to be on the radio with us that day.
Sounds great.
That would be great. And Don, thank you for taking time this afternoon and talking about, do you find it still difficult to even talk about it once in a while, Don?
I get tears all the time. I was in the hospital about a month ago, and I kept thinking about all this work that we've done, since November to get ready for June, and I keep thinking about going to those funerals for the firemen and the policemen.
Oh.
It just breaks your heart every time you think about it. But we're going to recognize those families. They're American heroes, folks. They gave a son or a father to make Rapid City a safe city and to help other people. You don't run into magnificent people like that every day of your life. I've always said, Bernie, and I've always said, Grant, the most distinctive honor in my life was to be mayor of Rapid City, not only during the disaster, but during the recovery. There are wonderful people out there, and they love their nation, and they fill up the churches on Sunday morning, and they're great people, and that's why Rapid City survived.
Well, I tell you what, Don, they love you too. You hear nothing but praise to your name and the work that you did following that tragedy with no guidelines to go by, but handling minute by minute by minute, particularly those first weeks, like you say, with 35,000 or 100 missing, and then so I know that you have been loved by the people with the great job you did. I know that for positive.
Well, you're very kind to say that, and I thank you, gentlemen, and let's talk some more, and I'll bring some real heroes. I got wet that night, but I didn't drag too many people out of the creek, I'll tell you, but I'll have some people on the radio with us that can tell this story better than I can.
We also want to know how a 30-year-old Democrat got elected mayor of Rapid City, so be prepared to answer that question.
Bernie, I can tell you with one word: narrowly. I won by 168 votes, but I got to brag a little, Bernie. Nobody ran against me in 1973, and that was the moment of ultimate wisdom, because I did not seek a third term, and that was the smartest thing I ever did.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again in the near future. Thanks, Bernie.